Earlier this year, Russia's Ministry of the Economy announced it was creating a proposal to roll out its own Russian Golden Visa program, whereby foreign investors could invest in Russian businesses and in the Russian economy, and in exchange get Russian residence and potentially even citizenship. Well, now some of those details are starting to emerge. I'm going to share those details with you and my thoughts on our Russian Golden Visa program. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. Here at Nomad Capitalist, we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs legally go where you're treated best, whether you're from the United States, from China, or from Russia. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. This is very interesting because a number of years ago, we had talked about a potential Russian citizenship by investment program whereby you invest in Russia, you would spend time living in Russia, you would learn the Russian language, and you could be naturalized in as little as 3 years. Now the country is saying, let's have a residence by investment program. People can live in Russia and they can work their way towards citizenship. And alongside this proposal was some earlier work where Russia's parliament was voting to allow people to naturalize and to keep their existing nationalities. There are still a few exceptions to that, but generally speaking, Russia was making moves to allow people to come and invest in exchange become part of the society. So here are the options that we've seen rolled out so far from the government's initial proposal. How do you obtain a Russian Golden Visa if the proposal does indeed come to fruition? Number one, you can invest in ownership of a Russian company of at least 15 million rubles. It's about 200,000 US dollars. Or if there's a foreign company and you set up a branch in Russia, then the investment needs to be 50 million rubles. Now we're talking closer to about $650,000. The company must be operational for at least 3 years. And what I'm not exactly clear about, and what the people I've talked to aren't clear about, is whether it needs to be a 3-year-old company or whether it needs to be operational for 3 years after you start it. So we need to clear that one up. Now the second option would be investment of 15 million rubles in a Russian business that's already existing. So you don't have to become the owner of the business. You just invest 15 million into someone else's business. However, the company must be 3 years old. It must pay at least 6 million rubles in taxes, and it must employ 25 people. So that's a more developed company. Number three, establishing a Russian company with an initial capital outlay of 10 million rubles, closer to $135,000, and employ 10 Russians. Or acquire Russian government bonds or real estate worth at least 30 million rubles, just under about $400,000, for 3 years prior to applying for the residence permit. So that one, if they continue with what it looks like it's drafted, you have to make the investment and then later just get the residence permit, not the citizenship. So there's some things that need to be cleared up here. But what I have seen pitched on various websites, news websites, has been invest $130,000, get Russian residence permit. And so what it seems like this is a program somewhat like Latvia has tried to do, some of the other Baltic states nearby, like Estonia and Lithuania, they've focused more on business visas. Start a company, put a certain amount of capital in, hire a couple people, get a residence permit. Now I think on that basis, those Baltic countries are probably going to be more competitive for someone who is rather agnostic to the country they're going to, in that Latvia's requirement had a lower tax obligation. Estonia and Lithuania, and all of them really, but in particular, had lower employment requirements. So, if you can hire one person or 3 people and put in, 18,000 or 64,000 euros in the Baltics, that seems more attractive than investing, $130,000, particularly when you're talking about investing in someone else's company. And now there's again a tax requirement and they have to employ a certain number of people. Or when you start a company and you need to hire a certain number of people. So those don't seem as competitive to me. What does seem very competitive is if they can figure out the timelines, $400,000 approximately in Russian government bonds. Obviously you're taking a significant risk there with the Russian ruble, which has gotten pretty well pummeled in recent years. Does it get pummeled more? Interesting question. I have started to, on a very limited basis, dollar cost average into some rubles for something in the very distant future, and I'm doing so at a number below 80. I think certainly you could see that number of the ruble go below 80. So certainly you're taking on some currency risk. Buying Russian real estate. It'll be interesting to see whether they follow Latvia's playbook and say you can only buy one property, which would limit you to either pretty substantial homes or something in Moscow or St. Petersburg for $400,000. If you go to central Moscow, you can easily spend 30 million rubles. I mean, you won't even have difficulty. You could probably spend double or triple that for a halfway decent apartment in a very nice part of Moscow. And so that could be very competitive. I'm always fascinated by golden visa programs or citizenship programs where you buy real estate and you get the status without the conditions. So obviously if you go to the Caribbean citizenship by investment programs, the approved real estate they sell, not only at the lowest price points is it often fractional ownership, but it's just not a good deal. It's very illiquid. You're not going to sell it for what you paid for it. It's just a bad deal. Latvia, next door, has had an investment visa program for years. It used to be a great deal because you could buy €250,000 in real estate. The government fees were practically nothing. Now the government fees are a little bit more substantial. But the biggest challenge in Latvia is you have to buy only one property if you're buying in Riga at that price. And so there's not a huge market in Riga for properties at that price point. It's a little bit more of an illiquid market. And so the difference in a market like Russia, where you have Moscow, for example, would be that you could buy a rather liquid $400,000 property, again taking on the currency risk of the ruble, and basically hold on to that for X number of years. Again, whether it's 3 years to citizenship or whether they're going to make you wait just to get residence would be less appealing for sure. That's very intriguing, especially if they open up citizenship. Now, a couple of concerns that are being brought up here are number one, possible reporting of foreign bank accounts for people who are under this scheme. Obviously, we talk about the challenges of being a U.S. citizen and doing that. I don't know that I would encourage someone to sign up for a program where they had to disclose all of their foreign bank accounts. Certainly, if you become a Russian tax resident, that could be a normal requirement, as it is in other countries. But merely to have a residence permit and have to disclose would be a little bit concerning. The other issue that they were talking about was Russian language requirements. For a number of Russian residence permits already, you need to speak Russian to get the residence permit. Certainly you need to speak it to get citizenship. That would also be a turnoff if they maintained that for an investment visa. There's really no other country that comes to my mind with any kind of serious investment visa where you have to speak the language to get residence, and in some cases not even to get citizenship. So those could be two potential turnoffs. Here's why I like the idea, though, is I think that me coming from the United States, I see Russia, I see China as counterbalances. I think that Russia is, particularly if you're single, I mean, it's a hidden gem to go and meet and socialize. I suppose I speak from experience. I have a wife who's from Russia. We did not meet in Russia, but I think that the country is vastly underrated in terms of a lifestyle option. I've called Moscow one of the top focus cities in Eastern Europe, a place where you might not spend full time and get all entangled in their tax system, but if you spent a couple weeks up to a couple months a year, I think it would be a nice base to have and potentially staying in the property you bought for your golden visa. I think it has a lot of the elements as a larger economy, larger country of the consumer conveniences that people like, particularly the ones that I hear people most concerned about when they're leaving their Western countries. You have a lot of that. Certainly the language is a challenge, but I think you've got some very beautiful areas if you stay focused on the cities. Obviously, Russia has its share of challenges, but I think that there could be an opportunity to use this. Russia's taxes for what it is are not really that high on personal income. Certainly reporting of bank accounts could be a deal breaker. Certainly the fact that if you have too many citizenships or permanent residences, that's an issue. Those do need to be reported for Russian citizens. So there's a lot of potential deal breakers here. But I like the idea of a more open path to be able to have a presence in Russia. And if they can clean out some of these more concerning elements, if they can streamline the business investment and be competitive, if they can streamline a real estate option. I love the idea of a real estate option, buy a property, again, currency risk, but I think central Moscow real estate I'll bet on that. Just again, from a ruble-denominated standpoint, forget the currency for a second. I think that would be not a bad investment, and I think it's already been a very good investment for many people. So a lot of potential challenges, a lot of uncertainty, but if structured correctly, it could be an interesting call option for some people to have. And if Russian citizenship removes some of the restrictions in the future, I think that wouldn't be the worst citizenship to have either. If I'm an American and I can be Russian American, there's an argument to be made for, again, some kind of counterbalance. And so, generally speaking, my preference is for countries that are smaller, countries that are more likely to leave me alone. And so a country like Russia, like China, like the US certainly has more of the resources to go after its citizens or even its residents overseas. And so I'm not saying it's for everyone, but I've got a lot of interest in seeing what develops. And so what I would like to know from you is, what comments do you have on the program? What questions do you have on this potential program? Because as you can see, I'm a little bit conflicted. I think there are certainly opportunities, but I also have some concerns, and I also want to see a program that's competitive. But again, real estate to me, look at whether it's the Turkish citizenship by investment, Colombia residents, if they do it in Russia, any kind of country where you just buy any property you want and you get something in return, that particularly would be very interesting to me. Government bonds, Russia does have low debt levels. Perhaps some people would say the debt levels are too low, which is an indicator of something else. That could potentially be interesting. But what questions, what feedback do you have? This is a developing topic, and so I want to hear from you. How can we discuss this better in the future? How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.